Hello. Drew, it's week 18. What is this thing even saying right now? What am I doing? Did I screw something up? We're off to a strong start. We'll get that going. Let's hit the ticker. I know that I did it because I set it up all this morning, but it is week 18 for fantasy football, which really means you're either in 2-week playoffs or you're truly like degenerate and need to seek help immediately.
Yeah.
I don't really fit into either of those boats. I just like to talk ball, and this is the best way I can see Drew's beautiful face every week. So, Drew, how are you doing? You have a game matchup this week, but it's already kind of been decided for you. So,
yeah.
How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm in one week 18 matchup with a 2-week playoff. I was projected to win 85%. The other guy's team's just like decimated by guys just aren't playing, which we'll get over that in headlines. But I'll be honest. So you gave me crap for it, but it's just true. Like the last 2 weeks of fantasy playoffs just took a lot out of me. Like Joe had to like really rip me apart in our text thread and just like get my head right, because I was off the rails with some of the losses that I had over the past 2 weeks are just like unforgivable. And then like 2 weeks ago, getting into the championships, the losses I had, if I get through those matchups, which I should have, I probably would have walked away with 6 or 7 championships this year, because like I went off in week 17. I had multiple teams that won third place when they put up like 220 points. Like it sucked. But I just couldn't do it anymore. And I texted the guy and I was like, look, I'm going to set a lineup, but let's just split the money now. I can't do this again. Like I can't. So we're splitting, moving on to, this freaking guy. Hey, yeah. Let's talk about this quick. Zach in the chat. My biggest blunder in fantasy football happened last week live on this show, where in the chat they mentioned Josh Allen might not play. I got all in my head. I only had like 40 minutes to literally make a decision. I played Caleb Williams, which was a bad move.
It wasn't that bad. I mean, it's not like Kyler did that much more.
But his differential probably gives me the win in that matchup. No. Well, yeah, because listen, I think I lost by 19. Okay. I took Kyler out, which was a difference of 12. And then because I was desperate on Sunday morning, I was like, I need Dalton Kincaid and Josh Allen to just link up for a few touchdowns. So I took Dalton Kincaid and put him in for Jonnu Smith. And then there's my difference. But if I don't,
okay, whoa.
If I'm not desperate, I'm not making that move. Trust me. I was desperate. I was like, I'm hoping Dalton Kincaid and Josh Allen link for like 2 touchdowns. Maybe I can come back. But
first off, you should have texted me, because I would have told you that was a bad idea.
Yeah, well, I didn't.
You didn't. That's the key. You should have tagged the channel and just been like, hey, around the 412 fantasy football, what do I do?
The other move too is I went into this playoffs with like, I got Isaac Grendo on that last minute waiver. And I was just like, this is my lineup. Isaac Grendo's got to be the guy. I traded for Josh Allen, for Garrett Wilson, a few first-round picks. And I was like, Garendo's going to step into my lineup as my flex for Garrett Wilson. I'm going to move with it. And then because of all the injury concerns and not trusting the Niners, I sat Garendo too. And there's the points. And I put Roma Dunze in, and it's
tough. It's one of those things. It's a very tough game to play. I know I ran into a similar situation. We had James Conner, who practiced all week, then took a shot to the knee, first play of the game, sits, puts up 1 point. And then I ended up sitting Malik Neighbors, lost by 15. Is what it is. So I think one of those things that I've come to terms with as like somebody that does like fantasy football, like analysis, and gives advice to people on like a forum like this, where it's one, you're never going to get it 100% right all the time. Celebrate it when you're right, figure out why you're wrong and try to be better at it, but no one's going to get it 100% of the time. I think two, it's like there is a lot of luck involved with fantasy football, right? So it's like if you are consistently getting into the playoffs and making yourself available to have opportunities to win, then I would say you're pretty good at fantasy football. But, Zach really just coming in hot today, which is great.
Talk about a best ball lineup. Like I changed the lineup that I set before I made the changes was the lineup I set basically every week for the past 4 weeks. I didn't even bother to move it. So it's like get out of here. It just sucks. It sucks.
It does suck. It sucks. But at the end of the day, there is some luck involved. And so you got to the dance, you won some dough. To me, that's a successful year. Zach, this is my Beanie Bishop, Zach Frazier rookie hoodie.
Oh, don't forget about Zach Banner.
And Zach Banner.
You snuck into the bottom there.
We'll
Yeah.
see. Yeah. Zach's definitely right, though. So it's process over results. Sometimes you ask people questions. The internet doesn't like it, but you move on. You continue with the afternoon drive, and then you just keep moving on.
It just sucks because if that game's not on Thursday night, it probably doesn't go that way. You know what I mean? Because I just didn't have the time to really. I didn't have the time to really go through and think about it. So
I mean, you went full Ruxin and you roster baited, and then you tinkered, and then it just backfired.
Yeah, but like I did really feel bad about Josh Allen not playing the full game. I did, but the reason why I hate it so much is like I could have played Mitch Trubisky, who had 2 drives, and he still outscored Caleb Williams. So, like, if Josh Allen didn't play, I could have put in Mr. Trubisky because he was available on waivers. But it is what it is. I also sat Malik Neighbors for Terry McLaurin, so it doesn't feel good. But like he was banged up all week. But I actually was reading about him. It's interesting for next year and beyond. There's like a reputation for Malik Neighbors at LSU, from what I was reading, that like he'd be banged up like all season, but he always went. So it's just like Monday through Friday. Oh, he's not practicing. He's in and out of lineup. Saturday shows up and balls out. So it's just like an expectation. So like we really shouldn't overthink Malik Neighbors anymore in terms of injuries, unless it's clear and he's out. He's gonna play.
Well, I think it was a combination of the injury plus like the Giants up until Drew Lock was like, oh yeah, I listened to Young Jeezy before the game, was like scoring 14 points a game. So it wasn't too great. And then all of a sudden they throw for all these points. The Colts put up a -4, like just super unfortunate.
That killed me too. Yeah. And I mean, Neighbors' points were all on screen passes. He just took them to the house. He's just he's a monster, but
yeah. So, all right. Well, you know the drill. Put on the lab coat one time for the one time. Let's talk about injuries. A little lighter on the list this week. I think just where we're at in the season, that's how it's going to be. Yeah, what do you got for us this week, Drew?
Yeah, not many like you mentioned. So you already talked about James Conner, who's placed on IR. You know, people have been rostering Trey Benson all season with the expectation they could throw him into the lineup. That's not going to happen either because he was also placed on IR with his ankle injury. So both, running backs for the Cardinals are going to be out this week and beyond, done for the year.
So that means, hey, Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I'm going to fade.
Where have you been?
I'm probably going to fade that backfield, though. I'm just not.
What? He's got a pretty good matchup this week.
Is he your only fantasy?
No. But San Francisco is giving up 9 points above average in the last 2 weeks to running back.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't trust them against the Niners. I just think the Niners defense is better than they played. I don't know.
Michael Carter, his rookie year, was like Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah. But
so I mean, you could do
it. What's the deal with the Imari DeMarcado? I feel like I haven't really seen him much the last few weeks.
He vanished. I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyways, moving on. Tua. He's also expected to be out this week. I know that he's an injury that's been popping up over the last few weeks, but I think people should start to prepare if he is out for Tyler Huntley and figure out if you have other options. Aaron Jones suffered a quad injury, but it looks like he's expected to play. Tyjae Spears, someone we were very hyped about last week, suffered a concussion. He's back in the protocol. I feel like he's been in the protocol a few times this year. So obviously that's disappointing, but you let the protocol be your guide. Tony Pollard should be back though. He actually missed not for his injury, but for having an illness last week. So you'll be able to expect him back in your lineups. And then the last injury I have is Chase Brown, but we're not going to really get into that one just yet since he's our main tender. So that's all I got.
All right. So somebody always in the chat loyal to the cause. So Chad's still talking about Josh Allen and how he should be playing Bryce Young over him. There's nothing more to say there. But Chad did have a question about George Pickens and like for playoff leagues. Do you do any like playoff fantasy stuff? No. I've done the Fantasy Cares one last couple years. I'll probably dabble in it here and there. It seems fun. I've seen a lot of people do like the playoff drafts. I just too much thought and effort to go into it because it's like a combination of like, hey, like who do you think is going to advance far, plus like who's going to be decent at fantasy kind of thing. It's just a lot more brain power than I'm willing to commit to. But for Pickens, looking at a wild card matchup, a lot of these leagues where you're not doing a draft, you get to play a player once. So who do you like most out of Chargers, Ravens, Texans for the purpose of like playing George Pickens in that first week?
I mean, this one's pretty obvious, right? I mean, we're gonna want Houston.
Well,
Right?
you want Houston for like the team purposes, but is that true from a fantasy perspective for Pickens?
I mean, the Ravens defense has been very good ever since they moved
Yeah.
Washington safety. It's changed a lot. I mean, the Chargers defense has been solid all year. I
I
mean,
would probably pick the Chargers out of the three. I mean, they got carved up by Tampa, Denver, and then New England even looked pretty solid when Made was on the field last week. So I
was
think the
that
Chargers for me.
a lot of garbage time too? I mean,
They got up early, but part of that was May was in the concussion protocol for a little bit, and then I don't know, but yeah, Houston. They've been the worst matchup last 3 weeks against Baltimore, Kansas City, Miami. That doesn't really bode a lot of confidence for me. If I'm looking at the Ravens, like you said, they've been a tough matchup across the board. And then you're looking at Houston. We said the Chargers, to me, like they've been a plus matchup for everything that's not a tight end.
yeah. I mean, it looks like they're both probably good. Chargers or the Texans would be good options.
Yeah, I would probably say Chargers 1, Texans 2, Ravens would be worst case. Or no. Yeah, I would say Ravens worst case. The one thing that'll be interesting with the Texans is I imagine that Derek Stingley would follow Pickens everywhere because we don't really have anybody else.
Yeah, that's fair.
So we'll see. I mean, I guess that the Chargers could try to do that, but I don't think that like Asante Samuel Jr., Derwin James would necessarily roll with it the whole way. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I would say I'd roll with the Chargers. All right, Drew. So let's jump into our headlines for the week. So I think really just what we wanted to call out is what's like the motivation this week for different teams. So we know that there are 4 teams that are going to be resting their starters. So the Bills, Eagles, Chiefs, and then the Rams, based on just like where they're at as far as locking up divisions, conference, et cetera, et cetera. But Drew, who are you liking from like full go? If I can lean on these players either from like a DFS play or from like a week 18 start, like who are the teams that you're like, all right, like these are like teams that I would want to have in my lineup if I can help it.
Yeah, so there's obviously a few teams that have a lot to play for. And I'm not completely fading, these guys from rosters that are basically not doing anything, the Eagles, Rams, Chiefs, and Bills. I still think there's some guys there. Obviously, Blake Corum is going to be a guy that a lot of people are talking about, playing this week in DFS and maybe even filling him in for your lineup. I was also thinking about like maybe a guy like Tyler Johnson or Jordan Whittington, some guys that kind of flashed earlier in the season, but because they were behind Puka and Cooper Kupp, that they didn't get a lot of play. But when Puka was out, Tyler Johnson had some flashes. Jordan Whittington's a guy that a lot of people are high on coming into the season, and week 18 is just like the perfect time for, these good teams that are already clinched to get some of these rookies in to give them a shot. So he's a guy I'm also looking at in DFS. There's another guy that I'm not going to mention just yet because he's my only fantasy for later. But in terms of teams that have a lot to play for, like there's some pretty juicy teams here for fantasy. If you have these guys, I mean, if you've been riding the Bengals all year, they have a lot to play for. Obviously, the Steelers have a lot to play for against them. The Broncos, they have to win to get in against the Chiefs, but the Chiefs still have to play some guys. You know what I mean? I still kind of think that their defense is going to be heavily with their starters, at least half the game. So I'm kind of worried about playing Broncos players. Like I have Bo Nix on that championship playoff. I already, took him out of my lineup. I was actually able to get Sam Darnold off waivers because he was sneaking by.
And he has a great matchup this week.
Oh, yeah. So I threw him in there. Obviously, the Chargers have a lot to play for. The Dolphins are still in it. So they're a team that you can still look at if you feel comfortable with Tyler Huntley. I personally didn't feel too great about Tyler Huntley last week, but I mean, Jonnu Smith paid off. Tyreek Hill he was okay.
He had a good game. Yeah, that was one of his better games this year. I think just from a pure volume perspective, he looked good.
I'm still a little worried about both of them, especially because I do expect Jalen Waddle to be back this week from what I was reading. So more heads to feed with a quarterback that's not really going to deliver the way Tua would. The Ravens, them being the first game, they have a lot to play for as well. So they're not going to be able to scoreboard watch.
I do think that if they are able to get up by a few touchdowns, they'll probably pull starters.
Yeah. Yeah. So if they're fringe guys, I would probably go against them. Like I was thinking more like Zay Flowers. I saw some talk online about how he could be like a fringe flex player for some people and that they might consider going elsewhere. I think Zay Flowers is a guy I typically feel comfortable starting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of chatter online about,
Pro Bowler Zay Flowers too.
Yeah.
I don't think he should have got it over Brian Thomas Jr., but
yeah. I mean, I could see someone drop. Someone's obviously going to drop out. You'll see Brian Thomas Jr. as a late ad.
Yeah, there's just not enough Jacksonville fans in a fan vote that are going to get him in there.
Yeah. And then Packers and Commanders still have, something to play for. Teams are going to be vying for the wild card spot because they don't want to get stuck playing the Lions or the Viking or the Lions of the Vikings if they end up with a wild card spot.
Yeah, whoever that loser is, yeah.
Yep. And then obviously the Vikings Lions are going to be duking it out for the division and the number 1 seed at Sunday Night Football. That's going to be really cool.
It's going to be a fantastic football game.
Yeah, it should be a lot of points. So I wish that they were on the main DFS slate, but unfortunately they're not. So I won't be able to get too many.
Really, the only other game, and I don't know if that one would be on the slate either, is going to be Steelers-Bengals because that's Saturday, so it won't be.
Yeah, I mean, you can get into those slates, but the Millie Maker is not going to have.
No, yeah.
It'll be tough.
There's no game that has 2 teams
in
it. So I think if you're going for something like that, you're really looking at like the favored teams that are going to be full throttle. What do you think about like the Texans, who it's like we don't really know? They're locked into the 4 seed.
Yeah, I was thinking about them. They're not someone that people are talking about like resting their starters. They don't really have a lot to play for. For me, they've been playing so bad that I think that they're going to have to play those guys just so they can try to
get right.
Yeah, get right. But they're probably not going to play the full game. I would say CJ Stroud plays a half, maybe 3/4.
Who even is their backup right now?
Is it still Davis Mills, your boy?
Oh yeah, my boy, the long neck.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like he's gonna play a little bit. I don't see it being the whole game. Nico Collins will say the same. Like this is tough playing week 18, but you know what I mean? Like I think it's fun to try to find these darts for DFS in week 18. So I'm gonna put out there. But I think those teams and maybe the Seahawks still have a bit to play for. I think that they could still somehow get the 7, but I think it's going to be really, really tough for them.
No, Seahawks are pretty much dead in the water, I believe.
I think that they need a lot of help, like basically everybody ahead of them to lose. And they might even already be out with the Rams winning last week and then having that advantage. But other than that, I mean, a lot of those other teams, like teams we're not mentioning, I would say that they're probably going to play their guys, but if they get up, they're going to sit them. It's one of those things like they don't need to worry about anything past week 18. So if they're playing spoiler, maybe they'll have a little more, try and see if they'll let their guys out there. But
yeah,
it's going to be tough. There's a lot of guys. Like I went through this list here. Jalen Hurts is still in the concussion protocol. So that's actually concerning if you're an Eagle fan.
That's going to be huge for them.
Yeah, so no Saquon, no AJ Brown, no Devontae Smith.
Well, they're down because Pickett was playing with broken ribs last week, so he's done.
Yeah, Tanner McKee is probably going to start this game as well. So, would
Pickett play in the playoffs, or is he hired as well?
I feel like maybe they're slowly going through the protocol. But that's what people are saying online. But I don't know if the protocol really works that way. Like,
I don't think it does either. Who was it? That's there's somebody that's been in the protocol for like 6 weeks, and everybody's like, "What the heck is going on?"
Cedric Tillman's been in the protocol.
Yeah. So it's like I don't think it's like we're just playing it safe. Like if they wanted to, they could clear the protocol and not play.
Exactly. So like, what's the point? And he can then practice too. You know what I mean? If he clears the protocol, he can still practice. He doesn't have to play in the game. So like, I've been kind of thinking about the Eagles and what they might do. I think Will Shipley's going to get a lot of run on Sunday, but I don't know.
No, I think they're going to let Gainwell just have a day.
I don't know because I think Gainwell's valuable enough for them that they wouldn't want to risk him being injured. I think that his role is big. I think it's going to be a lot of Will Shipley.
We'll see.
We'll see. I mean, Gainwell's probably going to play, but I just don't think it's going to be him getting a heavy work. I could be wrong. I think that week 18 is about trying to get the rookies involved. So we'll see. But yeah, Will Shipley is a guy that I was looking at. Obviously, I mentioned the Rams players. Yeah, it's going to be a wasteland out there if you had a lot of these, main starters. But that's the thing about Week 18. It's just been weird because like a lot of these teams clinched even earlier than this. So like Week 17 is still tough. So.
Well, I think too, it's the way that the NFL is trending with Christmas. It's really throwing a wrench into these teams at the end of the year. So I'll be very curious. This is next year's probably the last year that you'll really have to worry about it because Christmas will end up. Well, so next year Christmas will be on a Thursday. So I guess you got a couple more years for it before it's back into the weekend, and then it wouldn't matter. But it just doesn't seem sustainable for them to keep doing these middle of the week games. Like to have 4 teams play 3 games in 12 days, like that's just absurd. And what you're seeing now is with all of these wonky schedules, like the teams are just getting obliterated. Like the injuries in the last few weeks have just piled up astronomically. I'd be really curious from like a player safety perspective if they do anything about that, but probably not because they don't care.
Yeah, there's a lot of money. I mean, I remember when the Steelers played the Ravens for the division on Christmas. That was a freaking awesome game. Like I think Christmas football is fun. I mean, I know it's like an NBA holiday, but like the NBA is not serious right now. Like not many people really care for the NBA.
Well, regular season basketball is just a different beast than the playoffs.
But basketball is just not the same because they build these super teams and it's just not as competitive. Like their ratings are way down. So I think that the NFL realizes that and that they could sneak in there and take that day. So it sucks, but I mean I like watching football whenever it's on. I don't really care what day of the week it is.
Yeah. Speaking of, did Notre Dame actually beat Georgia?
I don't know.
Yeah, 23-10. Wow. Sorry, Notre Dame. I was unfamiliar with your game. I didn't think they'd have a chance. They usually blow stuff like that. Kudos to them. All right, so let's jump into Fantasy Football Tinder. If you haven't been rocking with us for the season, this may not be something that's super familiar with you, but we can fix that with a little bit of an example here. So let's get the faces small, the screen small, and click enough times. Did I really screw this up again? Man, I am killing it today. Wow, Drew. What a shame.
These last few weeks, like
I'm falling apart, man. It's just not. It's not good.
With the holidays falling the days that it did, it was really tough on like.
We just got to be better. We'll just things to work on for next year, and then
people just want to know what we have to say, not what we look like, and what
they need to know. They need to know. It's got to be done. All right, here we go. Now we're back. We fixed it. All right, so if you haven't watched us before or haven't been listening, this is what we call Fantasy Football Tinder. Each week, we're looking at different topics across the league to say, hey, like, what's going on? Drew, you might want to email us this example with Zach, but people want to know, is Zach going to run it back in the Our Boss Dynasty League in 2025? He took the ship, beating both of the hosts of the show in the semifinals and in the finals. So everybody that's a big Zach fanboy, they're like, oh, yes, of course, run it back, Zach for life. Woo. Zach, you're not winning the league next year. We're both swiping left on that. So miss me with that. You got lucky. Not really. Your team's pretty sick, actually. But so is mine, and I'm coming back with a vengeance.
Listen,
with CNC. So
my team is pretty nuts. But he was just riding that Burrow Chase stack.
Yeah, his team was money for sure. And then shout out to our boy Sarge, who won the Life League.
Yeah, I want to shout out. Wait, he beat Beefy?
Oh no, you're right. Tyler did.
Beefy like destroyed him. I think he
did. Yeah, he put up over 200 in the finals.
Yeah, but I do want to shout out Sarge because I had Crab Rangoon about a half hour ago, and that's the shit.
First Crab Rangoon of the year. It's pretty big. So you kind of briefly mentioned this in the injuries portion, but our Tinder for today is: do you think that Chase Brown can do this for you? Going into week 18, high ankle sprain last week on the weird slide play at the end of the game. Really questionable coaching, in my opinion, but he's listed as questionable going into the game on Saturday. Drew, is there any circumstance that if he's active in the lineup, we mentioned that the Bengals have a lot to play for, are you going to throw Chase Brown in your lineup knowing the injury that he suffered?
Absolutely not. Like, this was the easiest swipe left for me for anybody that knows anything about how I handle fantasy football. High ankle sprain. Like, I broke down these numbers for how players have reacted to high ankle sprains. Okay. So on average, running backs miss 2 to 4 games. It's not like they ever come back week of. It's always been 2 to 4 games. If you have a less than severe injury, it's still giving you 2 weeks. So right then and there, he's 1 week removed, trying to do the impossible essentially. And when players take the 2 to 4 weeks off, majority of them, 15% of them are placed on IR basically right away. Like this is the type of injury that they know right away. Like, okay, we're placing him on IR likely for 4 weeks. You know what I mean? We're expecting that. So let's assume he took the 4 weeks. Okay. The first game back after suffering a high ankle sprain and being placed on IR, only 50% of running backs this season, or actually as long as I actually took the stat from someone else too. So, but I did
shout out to whoever they may be.
It was a Reddit thread, but I trust it because it just all makes sense.
I didn't know you lurked on them Reddit streets.
Only when I, type in a question on Google and
it goes to Reddit.
Yeah, it goes to Reddit.
I'm actually a top 5% poster and top 10% commenter in our fantasy football.
These numbers all make sense. So I didn't really feel like I needed to, fact check them. Shout out to JD Vance. I said that we weren't going to have fact check things on the show. Only 50% of running backs met 90% of their seasonal rushing yard average. So let's say his average was 70 yards per game. Only 50% of them met that. Okay. And 60% of running backs scored greater than or equal to 80% of their average fantasy points per week. So he was looking at 20.6 fantasy points per game on average. And there's only a 60% chance he gets to that. If he does, great, that pays off. We're really thinking that he's touchdown dependent, in my opinion. 16.5 points is where we're targeting. The only thing that kind of swayed me to maybe I'd play him is because there's so many guys that you're not going to have this week. Like if you don't have Saquon, or you're going to have a choice. If you don't have Kyren Williams, you're going to have a choice. It's tough. But I will always side with taking a healthy player over a guy that's injured. I didn't have any James Conner last week. I didn't. I understand why people would play him, but he wasn't in my lineup. I only had him in 2 leagues though, both of which were third place matchups. So it didn't really matter for me. But if it was a championship, I would have looked elsewhere because I don't trust guys. That's why I didn't play Isaac Guerrero. I didn't play him the last 2 weeks because I just didn't trust it. You know what I mean? It was a hamstring injury. You just don't know when it's going to flare up. I'm not going to take that kind of risk in a championship matchup. And that's the way I operate. And that's how I'm going to continue to operate moving forward. And Chase Brown, he can't be in my lineup if that's the way I think. So it was an easy swipe left for me. I don't know how you could feel comfortable playing a guy has a high ankle sprain, even if it's not severe. Even the least severe ones are still 2 weeks. So it just doesn't make sense to me. It could just be a lot of coach talk just so the Steelers have to prepare for him. But if he's out there, he's not in my lineup. They traded for Khalil Herbert for a reason. They have to feel comfortable playing him.
Yeah, I mean, Khalil Herbert really hasn't done much for them. I know on his first touch, he fumbled the ball. But just looking at the game logs for him, 4 attempts last week versus Denver. I'm assuming that was an overtime, but really 8 carries in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games that he's played. It's going to be really interesting to see if he is the guy, how that impacts the offense. I'm with you though. I don't see how there's a scenario that you can't play him, which is so unfortunate because he has been one of the better fantasy surprises for the year. I traded him prematurely in Dynasty for a team that I was trying to acquire picks for. I ended up getting a 201, which is really a 111 in our league because it's a 10-man. So it's I feel decent about that, knowing just from a draft capital perspective. But in redraft, I mean, he was a league winner for a lot of people, a later round pick, if maybe somebody you even got off of free agency, who, in all intents and purposes, top 5 running back in the back half of this year once he kind of took over that role in the offense. So it'd be really interesting to see going forward. They do, I think, need to put him on a contract soon. I think he's a free agent after this year.
He's only a sophomore season, so
it's only a sophomore year, so then they should find. Okay. I thought I saw something about extending him, and I was like, oh, wow, that happened fast. I don't remember him being back there that long, but do they try to replace him? I think that they need to go all defense in their draft, so he could be a formidable option to kind of think about, all right, next year, maybe he doesn't have the home run the last week, but people aren't going to remember that. They're going to remember all the good weeks they had. So
Yeah, I didn't expect him to be able to do what he's doing. I mean, I think it's more of an indictment on him than Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert hasn't had the opportunity because Chase Brown's just been so good. I just didn't think that he was built for the work that he's been getting. I still think that they draft another back because this class is so deep.
It's loaded. It's absolutely
third
loaded
round
for
that
sure.
you'll be comfortable with. I don't know what his long-term outlook is. He's not a guy that I feel comfortable having in dynasty, so like I don't have an issue with trading him, but like he just went for 106 in a league that I'm in at the deadline, which is crazy, but I wouldn't do that. I mean,
which side would you want? You would want the pick.
Yeah, I would have wanted 106.
I think the thing that scares me about him from like a dynasty perspective, 5th round guy, like you've seen players like Tyler Algier, even
Dameon Pierce, killer.
Dameon Pierce.
Yeah.
Who were we just talking about earlier with Arizona? Michael Carter. Like all these guys had decent years their rookie season, and then just like that.
That's why I got out of Tyrone Tracy too. Like I'm a Tracy fan. I think he's a good player, but I can absolutely see the Giants just drafting someone in 2nd or 3rd round that's just very, very good. And
and I feel like for running backs, there's a lot more turnover from like later round picks than what you'll see from like wide receivers who like break out. Like it's not like Puka's going to get overtaken all of a sudden. I think that was a fear for people going into this year, but
he is so freaking sick. I love that dude. My gosh.
Yeah, he's a dog for sure. All right, Drew. Well, seeming as we have no questions in the chat, let's jump over to our OnlyFantasy segment of the show, where each week we pick one player who we think is really going to hold it down for us.
Look at it. It's week 18 now.
It is week 18. I fixed it.
Oh, I didn't notice it till like now. I thought.
I'm too quick. I fixed it right at the beginning. But also the background from the big one to the small one is 2 different things, so it's all good. But speaking of week 17, let's take a look back and review our picks from week 17. So we're back to where we began. I'm once again terrible at OnlyFantasy. Devontae Adams, the Green Bay Packers, the New York Jets. Everybody's falling apart. Sauce Gardner said that he doesn't want to be back on the team if Aaron Rodgers is back on the team. Somebody messaged him on Instagram and was like, hey, like recruit, I forget who it was, to the Jets. Oh, yeah, that's who it was. And he was like, nah, man, I ain't going to do that. Like,
not to him.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bring him down.
That's terrible. So I think for me, I'm just going to shut my mouth, just get out of the fantasy game for the season, and then we'll see what happens. But 5 receptions, 47 yards, 0 targets, wide receiver 47. And for Drew, got the melty emoji. I think it's a underselling of the performance for Kyron. So 13 carries, 56 yards, and the touchdown, which you called pretty heavily. Home game, probably going to score. Great shout out there. Then he had 3 receptions for 16 yards. Only like a 16-point effort on the day, but it did get him RB9 status. So Drew in the top 12 once again. So good to see there.
That's why I did the melting emoji, because like he was RB9. Actually, he was RB8.
According to Fantasy Pros.
Okay.
I don't know.
I look at the ESPN one. He was RB8 on ESPN, so
it was pretty close between 8 and 9. I think they were all like 16 point something.
Yeah. And that's the reason why I did it, because I kind of expected more than just a modest 16-point effort. Like only 56 yards rushing. I was expecting more than that. But he did get a
weird game too.
Yeah, he got in the end zone though, and that's what we were banking on. I was really confident in that, so it's nothing to be, it was still a good effort. But
all right, so now we've looked at last week. One more thing I wanted to do now that the fantasy season is like officially over, so we did our yearly OnlyFantasies. Which last year, who did you have last year?
I had DJ Moore last year because remember there was all that talk about fading him because the Bears didn't throw enough, and I was like,
yeah. So. Yeah, because we both hit last year. It was pretty solid. I don't even remember who I picked. But
you had, I think you had a quarterback, didn't you?
Don't believe so. Now you got me curious. Let's see here. So, Docs, around the 412, 2023. I had Keenan Allen.
Oh, yeah, and they both smashed.
Yeah, they both smashed.
Got hurt at the end, but it was still good.
So that was great. So we did all that. That was cool. So let's turn the page. 2024. Oh, man. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 84. By points per game, he was wide receiver 69. Nice. 31 receptions, 363 yards, 5 touchdowns on 63 targets. It's going to give him the camo emoji. His team hasn't even been updated on ESPN yet. He plays for the Texans now. Still in the photoshopped Ravens jersey. It's crazy times, but it is what it is. And then Drew had Javonte Williams, 134 carries, 485 yards, 4 TDs, 49 receptions for 296 and 2 touchdowns. He was running back 31. Drew, I think one of the things that you were saying was your only fantasy pick for him was that he was being drafted outside of the top 30. You thought he could be a top 30 guy. And I mean, all things considered, he was pretty close. So gave the yawn emoji for that.
I did say in that episode that my one concern was that Sean Payton wouldn't give him enough carries. And that's exactly what happened. Only 134 carries is just absurd. Like,
and I'm very fascinated, like what they're gonna do with Javonte, because I think that if you look at like the running backs from that class, so you have Etienne, Najee Harris, you have Javonte Williams. Like, I kind of had this feeling that like Javonte was the top dog out of that whole group.
yeah, a lot of people did. Yeah,
right. So then he had the big injury. He comes back, but is he there? This is year 4 for him, right?
He's gone.
And he's done. So I have to imagine he's somebody that's going to be on the move. But you have this giant running back class that comes back. Like, where does a guy like Javonte fit? It's going to be very interesting, especially when guys like James Conner just signed an extension, Chuba Hubbard just signed an extension. You had quite a few running backs go in the draft every year. So, like, where does he fit? I really don't know. Maybe he signs cheap with somebody. I was thinking something like a Chief sort of situation, but they don't really need him.
I think that his best shot is with Dallas. I've thought about that, but I just don't.
Dallas, the Chargers,
maybe with the Saints to spell Alvin Kamara, kind of like a Jamal Williams situation when they brought him in.
Yeah, it just depends on what they think of like Kendre.
Yeah, I don't think that he'll be back. You dropped Jaleel McLaughlin in our Dynasty League a few weeks back, and I sniped him up last week because I think that that's Sean Payton's guy for whatever reason. He just loves him because he found him and brought him in. I think that he's probably your Denver running back next year.
I think that I don't know. I think it's still going to be Estime, and then
I think it'll probably be a mix of both. They're going to use multiple guys, but it's better when it's a 2-headed monster than a 3. So
true. We'll see. Yeah, I just had to get off of Sean Payton's wild ride. It was not fun.
Yeah,
but all right, Drew. For the last time, OnlyFantasy Week 18. Who we closing the season with?
So this one's fun because I thought I could throw a dart, knowing that we're not having a show next week, so no one could come yell at me if it's not good. So we discussed a lot of teams that aren't going to be playing their guys. I think that rookies are going to get a lot of work in Week 18 because it's their time to be shown what they're capable of. And one of them has a pretty good matchup that I like going into this week. So I'm going to take a dart at Ray Davis, Buffalo Bills. James Cook isn't going to play. I think that Ty Johnson will probably dress and he might take some work. But again, it's about the rookies. So Ray Davis has shown over the last month and a half that he's capable of, being on the field. They've been using him more. I think that he probably gets 15 carries in this game. Yeah, Mr. Trubisky, I'm hoping for it. And he's going against the Patriots. And the last 3 running backs against the Patriots, I don't know if this is the exact order because I was kind of flying through, but James Cook had a shot at them a few weeks back. He went 11 for 100, the touchdown. He had 3 receptions for 26 yards and a touchdown. Ray Davis has shown he can be a pass catcher out of the backfield.
Yeah, and he's ripped some big ones too.
Yep, big ones. And the Cardinals played him a couple weeks ago. James Conner went 16 for 110 with 2 touchdowns, 5 for 28. He was RB1 that week. James Cook was RB4, by the way. And then the Chargers last week, J.K. Dobbins is coming back from his injury. It's typically like you want to give them a week, to kind of get reacclimated to the field after missing a month for being on IR. He still went for 19 for 76 and a touchdown. He was RB10. So, I feel really good about a Buffalo Bills running back. I will put my money where my mouth is. Ray Davis will be in every one of my DFS lineups. I can promise you that. I think that he's the one that's, going to get the opportunity this week because he's a rookie, Week 18, and Ty Johnson, they might need him in the playoffs because he's a veteran and he's been there before. So I feel good about Ray Davis. I think that, he's going to be a top 10 play.
Nice. Yeah. So you kind of rained on my OnlyFantasy parade earlier, saying that this player probably wasn't going to do much. I think he is going to get some run, and just knowing that they're playing a third string quarterback, I think that 1, divisional game, 2, they got to play someone. So I think Kenny G is going to get the call for me. I think that he's going to have a big game. I'm curious, so a lot of people were upset about Saquon's going to be benched, going to be rested, whatever, right? I do think that there's going to be some motivation from the offensive line of even though it's not Saquon, it's all right, our starting running back broke the record kind of thing. So I think they're still going to be opening up the lanes. I could imagine a scenario where Lane Johnson and some of the other offensive linemen maybe don't play.
I don't think Landon Dickerson will play.
Yeah.
Lane Johnson will play. I'm not. It's not the matchup of the line. I'm good with that.
Yeah, it's just, will they play him knowing that he's their third down back?
Yeah, I think it might be Will Shipley.
Yeah.
So we can why don't we give you a Kenneth Gainwell, Will Shipley type thing? I think that Will Shipley's actually projected in the app to have the most points too, by the way.
Interesting. Yeah, so we'll see. I just think they're just going to try to grind it out. They're not really going to be too concerned with it, and it's already been decided. So we'll see what happens. I just think that the Giants are kind of in turmoil right now, so you might as well. The other player that I was thinking about, but it just felt too easy of a pick, was just after seeing what Malik Neighbors did to the Colts last week. I feel like the Colts, talk about an organization that's a mess. It's I could see Brian Thomas Jr. going nuclear next, this upcoming week. Yeah, but I was he's already the ECR for him for this week is wide receiver 6, so it was
Yeah. So I was looking this up really quick because I kind of got an idea. Will Shipley on ESPN and Kenneth Gainwell are both projected 8.5. So no one knows. Yeah. It might just be a committee.
It could. Shipley just doesn't do anything for me, so it's
yeah, I get it. I absolutely get it. I'm just I don't know if the recipe is this is the same thing that we're both looking at. It's just that, in theory, you're taking Ty Johnson for the Bills, where I'm going with Ray Davis.
But I think Ray Davis has overtaken Ty Johnson. Ty Johnson has a very defined role for them, and it's not to be James Cook's backup.
Yeah, but I think that Kenneth Gainwell has that defined role too. So it's just
sure. Yeah, that's valid.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they both are probably going to play. It's just a matter of who gets more touches. It could
gets the touchdown.
Yeah,
we'll see. Yeah, I could have picked Michael Carter. I actually really like his matchup against San Francisco as well, but couldn't do it. Bijan should have a monster game as well, but again, you're not going to pick him for OnlyFantasy.
Yeah,
I guess you could.
Yeah, I honestly could see a world where Gainwell and Shipley both have top 20 finishes, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely see. It's going to be interesting for sure.
Do you think Tanner McKee's going to, throw it downfield without AJ Brown?
No.
I don't see that. So I feel like there's a world where they both do well. So.
I feel like Grant Calcaterra is going to have a monster game. I don't even know if that's true. I just want to say his name because it's fun.
I could see it. I always like to say Dallas Goedert's name because there's this guy that I used to work with. He used to call him Dallas Goedert. And I couldn't, no matter how many times I correct him, he thought it was Goedert. So I just thought it was the funniest thing. But
good grief.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I think this is going to wrap us up. So let's let the people know where they can find us on the interwebs. So just for everybody's information, last show of the regular season, we're planning to do some off-season content. We're going to probably aim for a once a month kind of thing. I got a baby that's coming in the imminent future, so we'll see how it goes. So that probably will impact our ability to do it at least early on. But if you want to chat ball with us or just talk some shit throughout the offseason, you can find us at our personal handles at JOEFRK and then at Drew Hannes. If you want to chat with the show, which is mostly me just on a different account, it's the closest thing that I have to having a burner.
I always let you respond. I'll be like, I saw one, I'll just text you the tweet and be like, hey, what do you think? And I make you respond, even though I can tell you what I think.
Yeah, it's fine. So AT412FF show, and then on YouTube, Twitch at Around the 412. From everybody that's watched this year, just want to say thank y'all for tapping in, being a part of it, whether it's in the comments, on Twitter, on Reddit, whatever you do. Drew, always a pleasure doing this with you. It's been a lot of fun the last few years. We're looking forward to doing more, doing it bigger, better for next season. And yeah, any closing thoughts for you before we wrap up the year?
I mean, I think that the show, like, honestly, like, shout out to you over the past year, like, transformation, like, in a really good way. Things are looking really good with the show. I think next year is going to be even better. Like I told you, I'll tell some other people. I'm going to start working on. I'm going to get a really detailed like research spreadsheet that outlines injuries, and we'll actually have, okay, this is what I expect next year. This guy's a high ankle sprain. This is when his bye week is. Like, these are the expectations when I actually think he's going to be back, kind of thing. Like, we're going to take that to the next level.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is with the charts, it's like we provide the information, but how can you take that and then transpose that into like projections? That's something that I want to look at in the off season as well, and maybe find a more automated way to do it because it's such a pain in the ass. But
yeah.
But it is what it is. But that's what the off season's for. We'll probably do some dynasty shows.
Yeah,
gonna get things going.
We'll
And then
agency show we talked about. We'll probably do a dynasty rookie draft, and also make sure you check out the actual Around the 412 page, especially during draft time, because we have 2 days where we'll be live with Zach and Beefy, and we'll cover the actual draft live while the draft is going on. So check us out there. I mean, we don't talk too much, fantasy during that. I mean, it comes up every now and then, but we'll give you a real analysis of how we think the players are and what they're, where they get drafted to, what the fit looks like, and if it impacts other players. Like, we'll cover all that over that whole weekend, which is a blast. And not just checking out Zach and Beefy's show, but like, Derek Bell, Steelers DB, check his out. His draft coverage is freaking phenomenal. The dude, like,
yeah, I've already started bookmarking stuff that he's been posting for like Dynasty.
Yeah.
Like, all right, like here we go. Remember that name, remember that guy, like whatever.
Yeah,
So.
he's legit. So like if you're looking for anyone that covers a draft, like there's some really good analysts out there. Like Dane Boogler is really good, but like Derek is phenomenal. I love the fact that I can just text him and be like, yo, what do you think of this guy like ahead of the draft? Because I don't watch a lot of college football, I'll be quite honest with people. It's not really my thing. But once, like bowls are over and like we're actually getting into the combine and stuff, I really dive into like the YouTubes and stuff. And,
The
Derek,
YouTubes.
Like I might only be, I'm going to be 34, but I basically am like 54 in terms of like technology. Let's be honest. Like I'm not.
It's pretty tough.
But yeah, if I didn't have Derek like really breaking down that stuff, and I probably wouldn't know as much as I do. Shout out to him.
Yeah, for sure. Cool, man. Well, that's gonna wrap us up for this fantasy football season with the Around the 412 Fantasy Show. I'm Joe Frick. That's Drew Hannes. Y'all be classy out there, and if you're playing this week, go win some money, man. Be easy.